Hello, romantics. I'm Sarah Gomez, author, romance lover, and host. You're listening to Romancing the Story, a podcast centered around writing, reading, and story structure, all with a twist of romance. We're at episode 87, and on today's episode, I speak with award-winning author Alisha Fernandez Miranda about writing fiction versus memoir, following your passions, and embracing strengths. We chat Alisha's fictional debut, Someone's Gotta Give, which follows new mom Lucia, a 30-something Latina expat in London who lands a glamorous job as a philanthropic advisor to the ultra-wealthy while her home life is teetering on the edge. During the discussion, we explore the myth of having it all, the realities of working in philanthropy, and how fiction can illuminate both viewpoints of ambition and burnout. Alisha and I also have a heart-to-heart about doing something great and what it means to give in philanthropy, through money or time. Since philanthropy is such a big part of Alisha and her book, she has incorporated raising funds for nonprofits during her book tour. If you are interested in doing something great as well, please consider giving this season to Poderistas, which is one of the nonprofits Alisha is highlighting. It's a female-driven nonprofit that serves women, community, and Latina culture. I have linked the nonprofit below if you are interested in giving or learning more. Something else that really struck me was the emotional honesty throughout our discussion as we examine balancing obligations while seeking purpose, expectations of others, and writing stories that reflect modern identity struggles, specifically those of expats, job culture, and working moms. It's a positive perspective that reinforces the idea that maybe we can have it all, just not all at the same time. It's kind of that pep talk that you didn't know you needed, and I hope it serves as encouragement to pursue passions and take risks. It's embracing the mindset, as Alisha said, of why not? Links to connect to Alisha, as well as other media mentioned, will be listed in the episode description. I do use some Amazon affiliate links for books, so if you buy through the link, it helps the podcast and is always appreciated. With that said, let's dive right in. Welcome, award-winning author Alisha Fernandez Miranda. Yay!
Hey, Sarah, thank you for having me. I have been so looking forward to this. I can't wait for our chat.
Yes, and thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy book tour and schedule. I know you have just been blowing and going everywhere, like over the pond and just like all over the US and all over the UK, right? Is it the UK? It's just, you're just going everywhere, girl. I love that.
Really, it's true. I'm home right now, which is like a novelty to be home. Today, I ran errands this morning. I went to the grocery store. I was like, oh, this is nice. I forgot what this feels like.
Yeah, with all that traveling, right? It's just like, wow, this almost feels not normal after the kind of the being in everywhere else kind of space. Yeah, and the time differences.
Oh my God, so many time differences. So many, like one night here, one night here, one night here. I love it. A lot of authors I know dread the part where they have to market their book and talk about it, but it's one of my favorite parts. For me, second only to the writing part. And so I just really enjoy it. It's you write a book alone for so long, you're just by yourself. And so to be able to connect with readers who want to talk about the story, I'm like, this is the best thing in the world. They'll do this all the time, but it's nice to be home too.
Absolutely. So in case listeners don't know, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and your writing?
I kind of started writing like relatively late. My first book came out when I was 41. 40. I was about to turn 41, my what if year. And I almost came to writing really by accident. So my career was in the philanthropy advisory space. So helping people figure out how to give away their money most effectively and helping nonprofits and charities raise money. And I did that for most of my life. In 2019, I had my midlife crisis. I decided I needed to just pack it all in and go try internships at all the jobs I wanted to do when I was a kid. And that's what I did in the middle of the pandemic, because that's a normal, sensible thing to do. So I did that. I had this amazing experience where I was interning on Broadway and in Scotland at a hotel and for an art dealer and all these really cool things. And I decided to write about that kind of transformational year in my life. And that ended up becoming my first book, my what if year. And off the back of writing my what if year, I was like, wow, I love writing. Maybe I could do this more. Maybe I could write a novel. And so I set out to write what is now the real book, Someone's Gotta Give, that's behind me if you've got this on video, but you can find it in bookstores everywhere. And it's the story of Lucia, who is a new mom, new wife, and new expat in London. She's a Latina. She's a fundraiser her whole life, and she finds herself kind of unmoored in this new world over the pond. And she gets a job advising the rich and powerful on their philanthropy. And I promise it's not a second memoir. It truly is a novel. But we can go into all of that as we chat.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because that was kind of one of my questions about it, is because I haven't read my what if year, but I'm definitely going back to read it because I'm so curious now the differences, like kind of seeing like the differences between like Lucia and, Alisha, and kind of figuring that out. So, but you recently released your fictional debut, Someone's Gotta Give, like you mentioned. Congrats. That's always a big deal. Everyone always, I think we kind of bypassed that with a book release, but that's huge. You released a book, 2 now, girl, in like what? How far apart were they? 2 years?
2.5 years publication date. Yeah. Thank you. I think it's huge. Writing a novel is hard.
Yes, it's hard.
It's hard. So I'll take all the congrats I can get, frankly.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, and like you said, the book follows new mom, Lucia, a 30-something Latina expat in London who lands a glamorous job in the philanthropic advisor to the uber wealthy, while her home life is teetering on the edge. So now this isn't your first foray into writing. Like you kind of mentioned, you did the memoir, kind of which shares central themes. So what made you decide to do a fictional take?
Such a great question. And I love talking about the two of them together, because even though one is my real life and one is my fictional doppelganger, I think they're both stories about coming of age, which I think can happen at any time in your life, right? Like people think of a coming of age story as something that happens when you're a teenager in your 20s, but I actually think that we are constantly trying to find ourselves as people, and certainly as women, and certainly as mothers and people in the world who are really kind of trying to do it all. And so both of my books, and probably everything I've written to date, I think touches on that in some respect. But when I finished my what if year, which was truly the whole experience was like a surprising delight, because I didn't set out to do the internships to write a book behind them. When I started writing, I didn't know if I'd even be able to write a book. I didn't know if I'd be able to write enough words to fill a book or how to edit a book. None of this was a foregone conclusion that it was going to be a book that actually people could read and buy on their shelves. So everything that happened, getting an agent, finding a publisher, the book coming out, I got to be on the Today Show, oh no, I lied. Good Morning America, not the Today Show.
Okay.
Manifesting. That'll be for the next book. Next book.
There you go.
All of those things were just so miraculous that I just couldn't believe that this was like something I got to do. So all of it just felt like such a gift. And when I finished writing my what if year and I sent it away, the last copy edit, the book was gone off to the printers. They were like, okay, great. The book will come out in the year. Sit tight until then. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? I just discovered this love for writing and I really want to write. And you're telling me now I have to wait a year till I even see this book coming out? No way. So that's when I started working on Someone's Gotta Give, partly because I wanted to keep writing. I wasn't done. And as a reader, I'm a fiction reader. You can see some of my books behind me. I would say fiction to nonfiction is like 3 to 1. And most of the nonfiction books are memoirs that I read in preparation for, when I was working on my what if year. So the idea of writing a novel just seemed like such a big goal and such a dream. So I was really I love fiction. I love reading fiction. I wanted to try my hand at writing fiction. And it's also worth saying that as someone who worked and still works in the philanthropy advisory space, I've definitely signed way too many non-disclosure agreements to ever write a memoir about this field. So it had to be a novel from day one. There was no question. I definitely needed to make some stuff up.
But I do love too that it's so inspirational that really you didn't really start writing or discover writing till right around 40. Like really started sinking your teeth into that, like, I want to write a book. Because I think sometimes we think as we get older, oh, I'm too old to have a published book or first time writer, right? Anything like that. But that is incredible that now you've had two back-to-back, book releases, and like, you don't show any signs of stopping. You seem like you really enjoy it.
I really enjoy it. And, but that was so much of what I discovered in the process of doing the internships, which then led to the writing of the book, was that I had gotten to this place in my life in my late 30s where I thought this was it. Like I've done all the things that I'm going to do. Now I'm just going to continue on and I'll be a mom and a wife and I'll do the same job and I'll do all of this. And this is what I'm going to be doing till I die. And, I felt horribly guilty that didn't make me very happy, as a daughter of an immigrant, which we were talking about before we started recording this call. There's a lot of guilt that exists for these opportunities that I've been given and this feeling like you always have to be grateful for all of those things. And I was very grateful, but at the same time, I just felt like there was something more. And once I got over the fear of being like, okay, I'm going to get an internship at this job where I know no one, I know nothing. I'm the least experienced person in the room, even if I'm close to the oldest person in the room. What is the worst that could happen? I'm just going to be bad at something and I'm going to see how that goes. And once I got over the fear of that, it was like there's nothing stopping me. And now I apply that to everything in my life, whether it's I want to learn tennis or I want to try fiction or I want to, do whatever. I just bought a Halloween costume of a Labubu. I'm going to be a Labubu this year because my kids were like, no, don't do it. And every year I wear the same costume. And I was like, you know what? I want to wear a trendy costume this year. I'm just going to do it. What is the worst that could happen if I dress as a Labubu? And, so that's kind of the ethos with which I try to approach everything these days.
That is amazing. I love the Labubu costume too. Just to add a little sprinkle on top.
I'll send pictures.
Yes. And like, I love that you mentioned that too, that like, it kind of was that letting go of that fear, right? That kind of like, you just kind of throw yourself at it, because that's kind of what Lucia does. Like you have a lot of transformative and resilient moments for Lucia happening like all at once, like newlywed, new mom, new job, cultural clash. I mean, it goes on and on, et cetera, kind of it rains, it pours mentality. Mm-hmm. So why was it important to introduce so many transformative changes in Lucia's life all at once?
I mean, I think there's two reasons really. One is that, it makes for a good story, right? Like one of the things I learned in the writing process, and this book took me 11 drafts to get right. So, there was a lot of writing and rewriting that happened in the process of learning how to write a novel, which is basically what I was doing. And so things like, adding lots of tension. Like, I love her. Like, I love Lucy. I just want her to like not have many big problems and just have a super happy life and everything is fine. And she gets her happy ending and blah, blah. But that would make for a very boring book. So by putting her in this situation where she is so completely untethered from everything she's ever known, she's in a new country, she's started a new family, she's a mom for the first time, all of these things makes for good reading, good tension, and like a good paced story. I wanted people to keep turning the pages. So that was part of it. But, I think the other second reason is that I think that in our 30s and 40s and 50s, like, that's kind of what happens. Like a lot of change often happens at once. And it is such a rare joy when you get a little period where like nothing changes, nothing transforms, nothing goes wrong. I think this is an age where you're sandwiched a lot of times between your parents and your children. If you're lucky to, have all of those caring responsibilities, there's a burden that comes with that. You're at a point in your career where you're supposed to be like locking in, as my kids like to say, but at the same time, you've got all these other obligations, that is life. Like that is life, that you get this stuff thrown at you all the time. You can't predict it. You can't just say like, oh, could you just throw the one thing and then I'm going to deal with this other thing later. It doesn't work like that. So, I wanted to tell a story that felt real to me so that Lucia would feel real to my readers.
And that comes across on the page as far as like all the stressors she deals with, because I'm just like, I feel like anyone who, even if you're not a mom necessarily, even if you're not a female, like you could dive into this book and really feel that same, like you said, tension and those same stressors of like, I started sweating bullets at one point, listening, like her having to work with work and then kind of juggle her home life too. I'm just like, I feel that deeply.
Totally. And the fish out of water thing, that's, you don't have to be a woman or a mom or an expat to have ever been in a situation where you are someone that doesn't fit the mold and you have to figure out your way in all of these unwritten rules in this world that you existed. I think lots of people experience that personally, professionally, throughout their life in lots of different ways.
Absolutely. We've all been in a situation where we've gone somewhere, whether it be a new job, an event, somewhere where we don't know anybody and we're on our own. So we kind of have to navigate it on our lonesome and try to figure it out from there. So you brought up an interesting point, though, because you were mentioning the pacing and the tension. How different was it writing fiction book versus like the memoir? Did that process look different?
It was so different. I think that I didn't know what I didn't know when I was writing the memoir, like I was just writing. And it even started as like diary entries that I was taking notes because I knew that this year of internships was going to make an impact on my life. And so I knew I wanted to record it. And I was an avid journaler basically until I got married. And then I kind of stopped journaling, which is a shame actually. So this was like a chance to revisit that. So there was I wrote like I was talking, like I was just like, I'm telling the story of what's happening. A lot of it was happening in real time. And which is not to like downplay the elements of craft and editing that went into my what if here, but I just there wasn't like a set of rules. I was just like writing. I was writing what I wanted to write and what I thought was going to be a good story. And that felt true to me and true to what was happening. And so all of these other things I didn't need to think about, like how should the story be paced and it was almost natural in a way. Because, and people say this that have listened to the audiobook, they're like, oh, it's like having a conversation with you for 9 hours. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. I'm glad you think so, because, it really felt like that. Whereas part of the reason that Someone's Got to Give took so many versions is because there are expectations within the format of a novel. You have to hit certain beats to meet the needs of the genre. There were things, even like the perspective of it, right? Like I was writing in close third person. But when my editor came in, she was like, well, you can't really speak in first person and also be in third person. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I just need to go back and now rewrite this whole thing with like different perspectives. So there's just so much I didn't know and so much I had to do besides all the stuff about like making the story up from scratch and making it flow and making the characters feel real and interesting who were people that were not me or didn't exist in real life. There was all of that. Just how you tell a good story that a reader is going to want to read that I truly did not know, even though I had written a whole book already, that I had to learn by doing throughout this process.
Well, and I feel like that's kind of a lot of writers who feel like every book is a different process, right? You try to do a little bit something different. And you are right. There are certain expectations from like when a publisher or in the, as far as readers go, right? If you're like reading romance and there's not a happily ever after or even a happy for now, right? It's like, I'm going to be mad as a romance reader and be like, where's my happily ever after? Because I expect that.
Yeah, totally. And I read a lot and I read a lot of novels and my aim was to write the kind of novel I would want to read. So that was very much in my head when I was writing, but I was like, at the beginning, especially, I was like obsessed with this idea of how does it work? Like, how do you take a book or a story, and what are the different beats? What are the things that you have to hit? Like how do people do this? Like, it felt like a really big mystery to me. So one of the things that I did at the very early stage was I took The Devil Wears Prada, which was a total inspiration for me, a book I love, and very much what I was thinking, like this, I want this book to be a Devil Wears Prada for the world of philanthropy. And I took the book and I went chapter by chapter and I tore each chapter apart, and I sat there with my outline and was like, okay, and this is how Andy's story works. And this is what happens with her love life and her family. And this is when you meet Miranda. And I just needed to get like under the hood and see how somebody did it. So I took that book apart piece by piece and then put it back together to try to figure out what Lauren Weisberger did that made that such a compelling read that I still go back to however many years it is later, 25 years later, more, I think, than when that book came out, and still want to read it. So, there was a lot of that, which didn't happen in the memoir. The memoir, I was just like, we're just going to write about this internship now.
Well, what a great comp title, though. And you are exactly right. Now that I think about it, it's just like, it is The Devil Wears Prada in philanthropy and in the UK. So, I mean, like, that's like a perfect way to kind of frame how this book kind of, how you follow around the journey. And if Andy was a mom. So like that's, yes. Cause you mentioned the expectations, and I know I heard that you mentioned on a podcast that Someone's Gotta Give was originally titled Unrestricted Giving to follow the philanthropic theme and backdrop. Both titles carry weight for Lucia's home and work life, a struggle women resonate with. Right? Was it your intention to use the title as a double entendre for both giving and philanthropic sense and familial expectations? And why did it change?
It was my intention, Sarah. Thank you for bringing that up, because do you know what? I love that title. And I love the title, Someone's Gotta Give. I think it's hit people in the right space. I think it does a lot of the same things, but Unrestricted Giving was always the working title for this book for the exact reason that you picked up on, because it is a technical term in philanthropy. So unrestricted giving, when you give a gift as a donor, means that you don't designate where the nonprofit has to spend that money. So an unrestricted gift is one where you say, okay, you nonprofit, you take this money and you do what you think is best with it. You use it to keep the lights on. You pay your staff, you run a program, whatever it is, I'm going to hand that over to you. And that is really good practice in philanthropy. And it's hard because a lot of people want to designate exactly where their money goes, and they feel like they have a right to be able to do that. And it's their money, they do. But when you talk to people who are at nonprofits, what they really need is the money to do whatever they want. And weirdly, philanthropy is one of the only fields where people do restrict their giving. You don't get investors coming into a company and saying, okay, I'm going to give you this investment, but you can only spend it doing these two things. And you can't do all this other stuff you need. So it's this kind of weird world. So unrestricted giving is a technical term in the field, but to me, it also signifies what family life and the expectations of family life, definitely motherhood, also sometimes being a wife, require, and more with kids than anything else. But I think that it is this idea that when you are a mother, you are expected to give without limit. You are there for your child and you give them everything they need. And that is a beautiful thing. And it can also be really challenging when you're transitioning into that, which Lucia is doing. She's a mother for the first time after 38 years all by herself, pretty much, where she didn't have to worry about anybody else. So that was where the original title came from. It got changed because publishing. I think the feedback, I think there was like a group of, maybe it was buyers, or they basically said, oh, this sounds like a textbook about philanthropy, like a how to give a philanthropy, book. So they decided to go for something that felt more kind of mainstream general population. I love the title. I love the cover. I'm so happy with how it ended up. But it's still in my heart. It's always going to be Unrestricted Giving, I think.
I love both titles, but I will say, I think when I read Someone's Gotta Give and I knew it had that philanthropic type of background to it, it kind of hit me in the field a little more personally, because I have shared on the podcast that I am a foster mom and I have adopted my last two kiddos. But that was something we always joked about, and especially in foster families, because, you got to find community, we got to laugh, cry, pray together. So we would always say, well, someone's got to do it. So the Someone's Gotta Give was kind of like, it kind of, like I said, hit me more personally. And then I kind of understood exactly what it was. So I do love unrestricted giving as well, because that is very true to how we are, I think, as family expectations. So, but I am a little partial, I'm going to say, to someone's got to give.
They did a great job. They did a
They
great
did
job
a
with it.
phenomenal job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was great. Because it has such a philanthropic theme to it, why did you want to use philanthropy as both a backdrop and a theme in Lucia's story?
I think philanthropy is one of those worlds that is so that when you're in it, especially this kind of very high value, world of philanthropy, you are so constantly struck by these moments where like you're going to be somewhere and you're standing around looking around and you're at a gala and the royal family is sitting at the table next to you and you're talking about child poverty, or you're at a conference where they're working on climate change policy and people flew in on their private jets. Like you have these moments a lot of times where you're like, does anybody else notice how crazy this is? Like, this is a weird, wonderful world that not a lot of people get to see. And so it just seemed almost like a no-brainer to set a book in this universe, because I think that it brings up so many fascinating issues around, what does it mean to mean well, and are meaning well and doing good the same thing, which I think they're not always the same thing. There are all of these paradoxes, and you get all these really fun things too. You get this glamorous backdrop where at the same time you get this unbelievable generosity. And sometimes those things link in perfectly and sometimes they clash, which just makes for a fun and fascinating story. So it is a world that for the last 2 decades, I have found eternally fascinating as someone who works in it. And so it felt like it would be really fun to give people a peek behind the curtain. And, the things that happen in this world, they do matter to everyday people, whether they realize it or not, because you have a small handful of people who are funding a ton of nonprofits that are then actually serving our communities every day. And a lot of decisions are being made by, again, a small group of people who are the impact of those decisions have a huge, huge reach. And so there were like so many reasons it just seemed like the right place to set a book. It's a world I love. It's a world I feel privileged to be a part of and grateful to be a part of. It's a world I started in and didn't understand. That was not something that I grew up with. It wasn't a concept that was like part of my life when I was growing up in, the suburbs of Miami, like near the Everglades. I didn't know what the word philanthropy even meant. I just think all of those things that have been sitting within me for so long, this felt like a really fun playground to explore all of them.
Yeah. And talk about tension when you have like all these like high profile people, like, and you have to kind of talk to them, or you have to mingle around and be like, I'm trying not cool about it. But, but it's kind of like, and it's weird and wacky, like you said, and people don't know. I don't see too many books set in philanthropy. So it was really nice to kind of see the behind the scenes, as I was mentioning before, someone who's kind of been on the other end of that spectrum, right? With me and my kiddos. So like seeing that how it takes to get that money for the nonprofits and kind of help with that. So very interesting. And I do enjoy too that you had kind of differing perspectives too, because we had Sue's in there too, who was a little more cynical as opposed to Lucia's POV, which was a little more bright-eyed and kind of rosy-colored glasses a bit. So was it important to include both of those perspectives?
Absolutely. And, it's really funny. One of the pieces of feedback I got from my editor, like midway through the process, she was like, why is Lucia doing this job? Because she doesn't really seem to enjoy it very much. And I was like, no, she loves it. And my editor was like, well, you might think that that's what you're writing, but what I'm reading is that she feels very cynical and jaded, and like she sees all of these problems in the space, a lot more like Sue's. And it was a really good call to me to go back and have a look at Lucia's character and put myself back in time of when I first started working in philanthropy so many moons ago. Because like any field or any job that you do for a long time, once you start to like lift up the rock and see what's underneath, you're never going to bring that enthusiasm and joy and wide-eyed ability that you do at the very beginning of a job when you've been doing it 20 years. Doesn't matter what your job is. You could be like a Minnie Mouse at Disney World for 20 years and you're still going to be jaded by it somehow, I'm sure. So I really needed to go back and remember that feeling, because that feeling is important. In a way, writing that for Lucia helped me remember all the things that I found really joyful about working in this world that sometimes get lost. But at the same time, I needed Sue's in there. She's kind of like Lucia's conscience. And I think that all of the different characters, she's got her coworkers, Tristan and Melissa, she's got Henry and Tamsin, who are her clients. She's got Celeste, she's got all of these characters in her life who all want to do something great with the short life that they've been given in this world. And they all approach it in very different ways. And I think that for me is a very important message of the book. There are lots and lots of ways to do good. There are lots of paths to get there. And I think sometimes we assume that everybody just agrees that this is the way that things should be done, or this is the right approach. And the fact is that people feel very differently about it. And in those tensions and differences is where some of the most interesting discussions lie. So yeah, I love the character of Suze. One day I want to launch like a sweater line that just has her quotable quotes on it, because I just think that would be so great to have. She just cracks me up, and she was a lot of fun to write. But I needed Lucia to be that introductory kind of, this is incredible. Think of what this could do. Think of the power and the potential, because that was important to capture as well.
Absolutely. And there's kind of a, like you said, you'll get jaded no matter what industry you are in, and everything that's kind of in a corporate type, usually dealing with money. There's always something, right? That's going to jade you to a certain extent. You're just going to be like, because we see a lot of it at the ground level, in the micro, like I was saying, like social workers we went through many social workers, unfortunately, because it does burn them out terribly.
Yeah.
Even though they are doing good, it's hard. It is hard work. So
it is. I think sometimes there's like an expectation when you do a job, when you're a social worker or a teacher, or you work for a nonprofit or something like that, that you should be able to push past the burnout or push past this because you're doing good. Like, isn't that enough to motivate you? But those are jobs like any other job. There's still jobs that take us away for our family and children that we rely upon to pay our bills, and sometimes they require even more of you emotionally, especially something like being a social worker. My goodness, so I think that those people who do those jobs are all, nobody starts a job like that from a place where they're like, I want to be a millionaire. I'm going to be a social worker. Like, people go into these lines of work because they have a purpose. They care about what they're doing. They have a vocation, or call it a calling, whatever you want to call it. But those people can also get jaded and burned out. And so, I think that certainly at the point of writing this book, I was feeling more like that than not. And at the end of writing this book, I think having to put myself in the head of this fictional character who is realizing she has access to all of this wealth that she can put in the hands of the people who need it and are going to do amazing stuff with it. And that's a joyful, beautiful thing. I was like, oh, right. There are so many things I really love about this work. It helped me have like a renewed sense of purpose.
I love that. I love that you kind of went on a journey yourself with Lucia.
I did.
And speaking of which, like, you're kind of doing, let's do something great on your book tour, right? Aren't you guys like raising funds and stuff while you're happen to be on book tour too? So like selling a book? How's that working?
Yes. I mean, that's been awesome because, I did this with my last book tour too. I did it with the Posse Foundation because it's just part of who I am. It feels like if I'm lucky enough to get to go and connect with all these readers and have people connect with the story, why not use some of that pixie dust and spread it on the people I think are doing really amazing work? So we had a handful of different nonprofits working with immigrants and refugees, which is a cause that's very close to Lucia's heart in the book, and communities and supporting women in different places around the US. And so with every bookstore stop, I had these really cute little bookmarks with a QR code and a donation page set up. And we took a little bit of time in each session to just talk about the different nonprofits and what they were doing, and why people should give. Because, you don't need to be giving millions of dollars to be a philanthropist and to make a change and to support a nonprofit. Most nonprofits are running off of these regular $5, $10 kind of monthly gifts or direct debits and things like that that matter. It matters so much to them to be able to do their work. And so many nonprofits are struggling right now, and they are being asked to do more and more and more, that it just felt like a great opportunity to use this story to tell people about some of the great work that was happening.
Absolutely. I love that you're still doing something great, even in the midst of a book tour. So that philanthropic line, just all the way through.
All the way through.
All the way through. And there is an emotional honesty in your storytelling. I will say, like I said, it just kind of hit me in the feels with all of Lucia's struggles. I'm just like, oh my God, I've been there, right? New job, new friends, new people, cultural clash, because my girls are a different ethnicity than me. So like, there's kind of like that, whether it's our feelings of inadequacy as a parent, I think, or navigating high pressure worlds, we're trying to find purpose, like you said, in all the chaos. What do you think having it all really means?
Someone said to me in like my 20s, she said, I think you can have it all, but not all at the same time. And that has stuck with me for a long time. As a person who has always been very ambitious since I was a little kid, but also always thought I wanted to get married and have a family, you know, I never realized that those two things would sometimes come into conflict with each other. I just didn't know. Like, I think that I had kind of grown up on this diet of like, you can do anything, you can be anything, you can have it all. And so that was just what I thought was going to happen. And when I had my twins, everything shifted in my life in ways that I really did not expect or anticipate. And I remember like asking people like my mom and my aunts, I was like, why didn't anybody tell me this was so hard? And they were like, well, you wouldn't have listened in anyway. You were going to do it anyway. So it didn't really matter. So, I think that having it all is the way that it's kind of portrayed in like popular culture. I think it's a myth, but I also think that you can have a full life with these different parts of yourself, your ambitious part, your professional part, your personal part, your family, all of those things. But you may not be able to do all of them at once. And so, if you're lucky enough to get a long game, there are going to be times where you will dial up one piece and dial down another, and times where you have to make compromises, and times when those compromises will feel terrible, and times when they won't feel so bad, And there's so many things that are phases that have a beginning and an end. And that was another thing that being a mother really taught me, that, you think that your kid's going to be in diapers forever, but they're not in diapers forever. You think that they're going to be an early teenager, and I hope they're not a surly teenager forever. You tell me, Sarah, it's going to get better, right?
It does.
It does. So anyway, I think it is complicated, but real. I think it's real because I think we want a lot of things. We want full lives that satisfy us in lots of different ways. And there are only 24 hours in a day. And so it can be very difficult to make that happen all at once. But I try to give myself a lot of grace. And I tried to give Lucia a lot of grace because, I think that she is trying her best to be all of the things. And at the end of it, she herself is like, she's just, she's not sleeping because she wants to pay attention to her husband and be there for her daughter. And she still has to work late at night after she's, everybody else has gone to bed in her house. And she wants all of that. She craves all of that. And she's coming up against these boundaries of space and time that don't enable her to do all of those things at once. And so she has to go on that journey where she learns what having it all means for her or doesn't mean. And I think it's real. It's definitely one of the parts of the book that's most reflective of my own emotional experiences.
Yeah, and I feel it's very much parallel to how a lot of people are feeling right now, because they want to find a sense of fulfillment even in all the chaos and everything going on, especially in the world or either in their home life or something like that. So I think Lucia's in a place, just a lot of people are, of trying to balance everything and find, like you were saying, purpose within all of it. Yeah, because I think it resonated, like I said, deeply with me, because I think people are surprised when I tell them that I do the podcast for fun on my own, like on my own time. I have a 9 to 5, but like I do this I do this for myself.
When I was going to do all my internships, people were so, why would you go and do this? Like, why would you go, they were like, why are you going to leave your job and go be an unpaid intern on Broadway for no money and like no reason. And I was, I was taking a break from my job. I wasn't leaving, but and you're going to leave your kids, you're going to leave your husband. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing this for me and I don't need to give you a reason. Like, why isn't that reason enough? And I found that people were so judgmental. And then once I wrote a book about it, everyone was like, oh, of course, well, you did it to write the book, but that's not why I was doing it. I did it because I wanted to have this experience. And as like a late 30s woman with 2 kids and a husband and a job, like nobody could understand that that was something that I should want or kind of be able to do, just for the pure pleasure of wanting to do it and learn something new and having an experience that didn't have an outcome at the end of it. And, I just constantly people were being like, why would you want to do that? And I was like, why not? Like, why don't you want to do that? It's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, why not? I love that mentality because like, and why not me? Why can't I do it? Right?
Exactly.
So like, I think that's such a great mentality to have sometimes, especially if we want to do something just kind of out of the ordinary, right? Just take a chance, roll the dice, see what happens and something really feel strongly about. So there were moments in the book where Lucia felt caught between identities and roles, especially being dropped in a whole new culture with unfamiliar rules and expectations. How did she find clarity to embrace her strengths?
I mean, the British are so good at this, right? Like the British are like the kings and queens of not saying the thing that they mean. So I moved to the UK in 2008. I had been a student before that. So I guess my first trip over was like 2003. But when I moved in 2008 and I started working in the UK, it felt like there were all of these rules about everything that I didn't understand, that nobody told me. They weren't written down anywhere. And I was constantly being caught off guard because I didn't know the thing you were supposed to do at the time. I remember being at a dinner and talking to someone, and I think she was like the Lord Chief Justice of something. This was a philanthropy dinner, of course. It was like a fancy dinner. I think she was like the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And I was speaking to her, and she said, I actually can't talk to you this course because the way that this is supposed to work is that the first course, you talk to the person on your right. And then for the main course, you talk to the person on your left. And I was like, I've been here for 10 years and I've been doing this wrong the whole time. Like, why didn't anybody tell me that that was supposed to be the case? So there's so many things like that. And so I wanted to give Lucia a lot of that experience because philanthropy is kind of like that too. Like if you don't grow up in this world of wealth and privilege and you start to work in it, no one tells you what the rules are, what you can and can't say, what you can and can't wear, what you can and can't do, but there are rules. So, Lucia had to go on this quest to figure out who she was as a person. And, anybody who has assimilated to a new culture knows that you have to adopt certain elements of it, whether it's a working culture or you move to a new place or whatever it might be, to fit in, you have to assimilate a little bit, and that's part of it. But if you let yourself go too much, if you're not clear on what that core is of who you are, the strengths as you call them, but like those fundamental things of your being, your values, whatever they might be, you will lose yourself when you move to a new place. You will fully assimilate. Lots of people fully assimilate and they forget who they are. And that's where Lucia is throughout a lot of the book. She has forgotten who she is. She has forgotten what she can do. She's forgotten the power that she holds in this quest to be all of these things to all of these people at all the time. So I think that she finds her clarity to embrace her strengths, as you said, by messing up a lot. She tries and fails and tries again and fails. And it takes her getting to a point where she has stripped back so much of, like, she's forgotten so much of who she is, and she gets called out for it, that she then has to be like, wait, who am I really? She has to refine that core of who she is as a person, not a mother, not a wife, not a person who works for this bank, not an expat, but Lucia as a person. And then she has to be able to go forth in that way and decide the things that she wants to take on and make part of herself and her culture, and the things that she wants to discard. And so, like many of us, I think she gets there through trial and error with plenty of errors.
Yeah. And we kind of, and I love that it's a little more exaggerated, but we take that into our everyday lives, really. Like, right. Even if we're assimilating in a new workplace, like you said,
Yes.
sometimes there are unspoken rules, like as far as like what you do and don't do. Like, I didn't know one time in my work that the CEOs were behind locked doors, and you don't go behind those locked doors ever. So did not know that. So I was looking for someone one time, I accidentally got into the black door. So
Love
okay.
it. Oh, I love it.
I didn't mean to. I didn't know. Nobody told me. I was fresh out of college, and I just like kind of walked right in there. And then the administrative assistant just walked me right back out. She's like, "It's okay. I'll go find it for you." I was like, "Oh, okay. Sorry."
But you know what? That stage of your life, like that right out of school into your very first job, no one tells you all the things you're supposed to know. They tell you like the basics, but no one tells you the things like don't go behind the locked door. Don't make smelly food in the microwave of your kitchen. You're going to be the one that gets judged for doing all of that. And so I remember, like, especially in my very first job, all of these things that people would tell me about what I should and shouldn't do. I remember somebody saying, never offer to get coffee and tea for people because they'll treat you like a secretary. And this was like an older woman who had clearly, had to really fight for her place, her rightful place, as smart as she was, but not to be treated like a secretary in their meetings. So I think for the first few years, people just thought I was like really mean because I would never offer to get coffee or tea for anybody. So it's like, oh, no, I don't ever want to be treated like a secretary. Or, I think that it happens in so many elements. If your kids are starting a new school and all the parents know each other, like there's so many situations in life where there are every situation has lots of rules. Rarely does anybody sit and tell you what they all are. So, I think that that's a realistic scenario to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Lucia is right where all of us have been at some point in our lives to kind of like try to acclimate and figure out, okay, how do I become one of the pack, right? How do I figure out like my way and navigate, but like keeping a sense of myself too.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And what makes her special. And I've chatted with other guests on the podcast, a doctor, a life coach, about kind of transitional phases in our lives and pursuing our passions, kind of what we talked about, which is where we find Lucia in the midst of being ambitious and doing her best to manage it all. After writing 2 books, being a CEO, then going back to being an intern, being a wife and a mother, has your definition of ambition evolved over time?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, I write about this a lot in my What If Year, that I had this very crystal clear idea of what I wanted to achieve in my life and the picture of what that looked like. And then I kind of got there and I all of a sudden realized like, wait, maybe this isn't exactly what I want to be doing. Why didn't I do these other things? Why didn't I pursue these creative sides of my existence? Is it too late? Then the answer was no, it's not too late. I'm going to go back and do them. But in one of the things that was one of the most important lessons I learned in my year of my internships was that, it was okay to fail at things and that I could do things where I wasn't very good at them, but I enjoyed them and that was fine. Like I could be terrible at, one of my internships was I worked at a hotel in the Isle of Skye, a very remote part of Scotland. And I had a rotation. So I did housekeeping and the bar and the restaurant. I did filing in the back and I was good at the filing, but I was really bad at everything else. Like really, really, really bad at everything else. I'm very clumsy. I have no hand-eye coordination. I learned this about myself in the process of doing that internship, but I loved it. And so all of a sudden, all of these things that I had thought, this is what ambition is, this is what success is, all of these things for me, all those definitions were broken. I was like, oh, there are different ways to think about this. So it has massively evolved over time as I have gotten older and had more perspective, as I have achieved success and failure in my career. And, I think that the one thing that I know for sure is that it's always going to change and keep changing. Right? That there is nothing, I'm at such a different stage in my life and what I can do with my time and what is required of me as a mom and what is required of me in my work with twins who are about to turn 14 than I did when they were twins who were 2. Then my ambition was, could I please sleep at least 6 hours at one time? That would be really, really nice. whereas now I'm like, can my children please want to spend some time with me during the day?
But get up before noon, right?
Exactly. Or that would be lovely. But it's always going to evolve. Like it's never going to stop evolving. And I kind of think that's a beautiful thing about life. And I'm trying to embrace that uncertainty, but also realize that I can be ambitious and I can be okay with failure. And those two things can coexist. And that is absolutely fine.
What a great kind of like note to end on, I think, because that kind of encapsulates a lot of like, I think your journey and Lucia's journey too. And now I see the parallel of why Lucia is a little clumsy. So when you said she didn't wear.
I'm like, you can't see all of this sweater that I'm wearing right now, Sarah, but some of it has food on it from my lunch. So yeah, that's definitely a characteristic Lucia and I share.
Yeah, that was something I do too, because I'm just like, if I wear white, I got to stay away from everything for a while.
I'm impressed that you even own white. That's amazing.
All this amazing, like all your amazing experiences, both of your books, which kind of have some similar themes, but are different in perspectives. So where can listeners find your books and how can they connect with you?
You can find my books everywhere books are sold. You can go to your local independent bookstore, which I would love. You can also get them places like Amazon. Audiobook. The audiobook for Someone's Gotta Give is great. It was recorded by a phenomenal voice actress named Abigail Renault, she does all the accents. She slays. She's like really, really good at it. So you can almost not, if you just look for it, you can find the book anywhere, which is amazing. And you can also find me online for my sins more often than I'd like to be. So you can find me on Instagram at Alisha F. Miranda or on my website, alishafmiranda.com. And that's ALISHA because that's not normally how people spell it, but that's how I spell it. So yeah, good luck trying to not find me. It's almost impossible.
Thanks so much to Alisha for joining the show. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That way, you're the first to hear new episodes when they drop. And if you get a chance, feel free to leave a review. It helps support the show and allows more opportunity to bring in all kinds of fantastic guests. There's also a link to the YouTube channel in the description if you'd like to see the interviews with some of the guests and see them show off their lovely books. As always, stay safe, be well, and keep writing. Bye!